Hey, happy Friday morning, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. And this is installment number 2 of my examination, my review and response to Joel Richardson, who wrote a book, Mystery Babylon, Unlocking the Bible's Greatest Prophetic Mystery. Pardon me. As I have suggested to you, Mr. Richardson is a good writer. He's entertaining. He's easy to understand. I consider his attempt to solve the mystery of Babylon in Revelation to fall far, far short, and in fact to be a direct violation of what the book has to say. He sets out to give us some criteria by which we can identify Babylon of Revelation. One of the keys, this is found on page 14 of the book, one of the keys for identifying Babylon, he says, is to understand that Babylon was a consumer city. He then begins to describe all of the different things that Revelation 18 verses 11 to 13 describe. And he says, while this list certainly is not exhaustive, it includes some of the city's primary imports. And he says, these must be literal. And he says, why would the Scriptures take the time to give us what is essentially a grocery list of a symbolic city? That wouldn't make any sense. Obviously, this portion of the prophecy is not symbolic. There are some things within Scripture, just as in everyday life, that were never intended to be taken symbolically. Well, I'd agree with that in principle. And he says that list is a perfect example. And so the list is literal, therefore the city is literal. Oh, but wait. The word Babylon does not designate literal Babylon. Now, I'm not arguing that the items in the list, the grocery list, if you please, are symbolic. I'm just simply saying that Mr. Richardson seems to be giving us a hermeneutical criteria that he himself violates. Not only that, I want you to notice that he makes a statement here. These items are literal. On the very next page, Mr. Richardson says this: while I'm usually hesitant to read modern equivalencies in ancient descriptions. Well, that's simply not true. He does it all of the time in the book. But nonetheless, while I'm usually hesitant to read modern equivalencies in ancient descriptions, I think it is quite fair here in Revelation 18, where it talks about all of the carriages, Revelation 18:13. And he says, I think it quite fair here to equate carriages with, catch this, automobiles. Babylon will not be a major auto manufacturer. Instead, whatever forms of transportation that she uses will be largely imported. Then he says she imports food items and she imports humans. Now, let's be real serious here. He tells us that the grocery list, the list of items in Revelation 18, are to be taken literally. They are food stocks, they are humans, they are, they're precious items of garments, etc. But when he comes to carriages, what does he do? He abandons his claim that the list is literal, and he makes it symbolic of automobiles. By the way, the word that the translation that he refers to says is carriages is better translated as wagons. It's not carriages, it's wagons. You can see virtually any lexicon on that. Now, it is absolutely true on one level that Babylon of Revelation was a consumer city. But what Mr. Richardson does is he tries to make Babylon of Revelation into a world enterprise commercial center, as if there's no one else like her. And by that, by the way, he tries to eliminate Jerusalem or even Rome. Now look, folks, how would it be possible on one level, if you're going to talk about purely commercial evidence, if you're going to talk about maritime imports, how can you eliminate Rome from that? Well, I don't take Rome as Babylon. But based upon his own criteria of imports and this city being a great, quote, consumer city, there's no justification for eliminating even Rome of the day. But I want to suggest to you that Babylon of Revelation also fits Jerusalem, Old Covenant Jerusalem. It absolutely staggers me that so many commentators overlook the role and the significance of Jerusalem in the ancient world in regard to commerce. She was a major commercial center. Joachim Jeremias, who wrote a book, Jerusalem in the Life and the Times of Jesus the Messiah, tells us in his book, quote, and I'm reading from my book, Who is This Babylon, page 256. Jeremias lists Greece, Lebanon, Tyre, Sidon, Adiabene, Babylonia, Mesopotamia, Persia, Arabia, India, as just some of the sources from which Jerusalem imported goods. That's 10 countries. 10 countries. And that's not even all of them. Does that not indicate that Jerusalem was a pretty major commercial center? Furthermore, he says, quote, foreign trade had considerable importance for the holy city. Josephus, who was a contemporary of John, said, quote, nor indeed is Judea, and Jerusalem obviously, destitute as such delights as come from the sea, since its, catch this, since its maritime places extend as far as Ptolemais, unquote. That's in Wars, Book 3, Chapter 3, Paragraph 5. Now look, these are just some of the sources. Now let me read to you just a tad more from my book. Quote, again from Jeremias, the national capital influenced commerce in two ways. It drew trade toward Jerusalem by promoting business transactions, and it provided a ready market for trade because of the heavy demand for, catch this, because this has to do with every single item in Revelation chapter 18. Its demand for luxury clothing, jewelry, a demand met primarily by, quote, foreign trade, unquote. Foreign trade in Jerusalem, quote, consisted of food supplies, precious metals, luxury goods, and clothing materials. That's in his book, page 38. In addition, cattle and livestock came from Moab, Hebron, Sharon, Lydda, Arabia, and other regions. His book, Jeremias' book, page 47. Look, folks, for anyone willing to go into the actual history and actual importance of ancient Jerusalem, first century Jerusalem, it is more than obvious. You can lay Revelation chapter 18 on a piece of paper. You can outline every single item of import, every single item of commerce, and you can list the items imported by Jerusalem, and there is perfect correspondence. And thus, when Mr. Joel Richardson virtually ignores Jerusalem as a major commercial center, as a center importing the very items listed in Revelation chapter 18. He is ignoring the absolute, undeniable historical facts. And he wants to make those things apply to Mecca and Saudi Arabia. That ignores the historical first century existence of Babylon. You know, look, folks, Babylon in Revelation already existed. Do you catch the power of that? Babylon in Revelation already existed when John wrote. But guess what? The Islamic Empire, Mecca as the capital, did not exist for another 600 years. Is that not enough all by itself to completely and totally negate the argument by Mr. Joel Richardson in his book, Mystery Babylon? Let me recommend that you get a copy of my book, Who is This Babylon? It is grounded in historical facts. It does not deny historical facts. It is based solely and squarely and firmly on first century realities and honoring history and the text. Go to my website, donkpreston.com or bibleprophecy.com. Order the book. Send me a note that says you saw the offer on YouTube or Facebook and your total cost will be $19.95. That'll save you $5 shipping. Look, we've got a whole lot more in our examination of Joel Richardson's book, Mystery Babylon. You're going to be absolutely amazed at how he conveniently ignores historical facts. Number two, as in the total inconsistency in regard to, well, I don't normally symbolize, historical references like this. However, carriages mean automobiles. That's totally inconsistent, ladies and gentlemen. Totally inconsistent. And so indeed, we have a whole lot more. And we'll share that with you, Lord willing, next Friday. Be looking forward to that.